I felt it was a bad omen when there was a Total Recall remake trailer right before The Amazing Spider-Man, and the whole time I could only think, why? Why? At least they're leaving in the chick with the 3 knockers. Most of you know I really liked Spider-Man 3, even though it didn't live up to the standards of the other two, and how livid I was when the reboot was first announced. At first I thought the old franchise was just fine as a trilogy, but the promise of Dr. Connors finally becoming the Lizard, along with the Black Cat, had me getting hyped, and then in one swoop all my hopes were taken away. But it's been over 2 years, I've more or less gotten over it, and decided that with this new film, it's better to not constantly try to compare it with the old series. But if I have to, the first 2 are still a bit better than Amazing, but Amazing is definitely a bit better than the third. Amazing Spider-Man has its flaws, definitely, and I'll get them all out of the way right now. The film not only seemed to drag on somewhere in the middle, but blunder about aimlessly. Sure, Spidey 3 had its slow bits, but I still correctly felt it was building up to something big. And Amazing, for a while, I didn't. Even though I could kind of piece together the general flow from the trailers, I still hate the new costume, especially the ostentatious-looking web shooters. One thing where I thought the film would one-up the old trilogy was with a more wisecracky Spidey. But alas, not as much as the trailers led us to believe. It still feels like it's missing something without J.J. Jameson. The part where Peter first discovered his superpowers felt really retarded. Going back to the original, anyone ever feel it was weird how no one pieced together later on that Peter was Spider-Man after that display in school? Here, that nagging feeling's even worse. The film also has a lot of instances where Peter has trouble adjusting to his super strength, and well into the film they keep popping up and they're just not funny anymore. And yes, I still hate the coatless, snoutless lizard. I'm sorry, but to distinguish the lizard from every other fantastical reptile monster, I need that lab coat. It's an important visual distinction for him. It's as jarring to me as Parallax not being a golden space cockroach in Green Lantern. And remember that I like the GL movie a lot. That being said, I find myself in the odd position of defending the film against snooty critics insisting it's just a lazy remake of Raimi's original. Really? Really? While I admire how Raimi's trilogy felt religiously faithful to the comics, I respect how this new movie didn't stick as closely and did its own thing, more or less. There's no actual wrestling match this time. The situation with the thief Peter lets skip on by feels a lot different, and the whole with great power comes great responsibility thing doesn't click for Peter right after his uncle's death. Here it takes a bit more. Plus, with Gwen instead of MJ, a villain yet to be used in film, and bringing in Peter's parents, remake my ass! That's like saying Batman Begins is a remake of Burton's films. With all the complaints I mentioned before, it's hard to say why I enjoyed it so much. I guess it's just the obvious above-average quality of the directing, acting, and writing. For me, that carries more weight than any pissy fanboy complaints. But I do think Andrew Garfield looks the part of awkward nerd better than Tobey Maguire did, and again, his acting was great. Plus, this movie puts a lot more emphasis on Peter's intelligence, to the point where having mechanical web shooters this time felt unnecessary. They could have been organic again and it would have made a lick of difference. Now that's good writing. Also, it's amazing how classy Emma Stone looked while wearing ridiculously short skirts most of the time. As for the lizard, wasn't the best CGI effects out there, but he shined in moments you didn't see his face. Sound cues, glimpses of the destruction, just seeing his arm rip into something, that sort of thing. And unlike Raimi's movies, Flash also plays a more important role here, and his character development is just like in the original comics. Plus, best Stan Lee cameo ever. Whole fucking audience was laughing. I thought I couldn't get better than seeing Stan Lee and Peter Parker together face to face, but there you go. So at the end of the day, this wasn't better than the Avengers, but I enjoyed it more than my favorites from last summer, Green Lantern and X-Men First Class. I haven't felt this jazzed about comic book films since 2008, where we also got an awesome film with Robert Downey Jr., and then a fun reboot. Hopefully, history will repeat itself with an equally awesome Batman movie. But as for this, I'll give Amazing Spider-Man an 8.75 out of 10. As long as you don't constantly try to compare it with Raimi's movies, you'll enjoy it just fine.